Has your bathroom deteriorated beyond repair and it's now time to renovate it? Then come along with us and we'll show you comprehensively how it can be done. Let's go. Hey guys, Musa here from Quantum Home Improvements and Solutions. Welcome back to the channel, and I've got Eugene with me again.
Hello everyone.
Okay, so we're now up to the second stage of this bathroom renovation. So if you haven't seen the first stage, I will put a link below so you can see how we've prepared this bathroom up to the waterproofing stage, and now we're up to the tiling stage. Okay, so Eugene, what do you think so far?
Well, I think everything went quite well. We demolished the previous toilet. We gutted the place, we ground up all the tiles, we did the waterproofing, and I'm looking forward to finishing it off with the tiling and all the fixtures.
So the waterproofing has now dried. We've actually given it around about 14 hours to dry, which is much more than you actually need. You only need 6 to 8 hours roughly, but you know it's dry when you're walking on it and it's not too sticky. You might hear a little bit of stickiness, but it can't be excessive. Okay, so this is the exciting bit now, Eugene. This is where it starts looking pretty. So the first half is the really ugly stuff. Now this is where the cosmetics come in. So Eugene, are you ready?
Let's go!
All right, so now before we start, we have to do the set out once again. We've done the preliminary before we constructed the room. Now we do the final. It's got to be fairly accurate. So just here is the center of this wall here going this way. And so the tiles are 600 wide by 300 high. We are going to put them horizontally for the walls. Now the floors are a 300 by 300 tile. So the floors, we're going to tile them at 3mm spacings, which is the Australian standards. But the walls, we're going to space them at 1.5mm. So they're not the same tile. In actual fact, these floors are a porcelain tile, which are much stronger. And then the wall tiles are a ceramic tile. And Eugene picked them up from Jess and Rebecca. And I'd like to thank you girls for all the help you've given me over the years. So when I do my set outs, I try to do even cuts in the room. So you don't see a full tile on one side and then a small cut on the opposite. So I've marked it here and I've put my level down and I know that's going to work really well, and I've checked it on the other side as well. So along this wall, we'll have a cut as well. So we've measured to the middle of the niche. This will be a 600 tile and then it will be cut to the both ends. So now this tile, working half the wall tiles, it'll actually sit roughly about here. So you can see there'll be this cut almost the same size as the back wall. So that should look really good. So the next thing you need to take in consideration is when this tile sits in the shower floor, and the waste, which is a smart waste, will just sit up against it. Now, this can be moved around a little bit. There's a little bit of play. Okay, so now that we've done the layout, we're gonna go mix the glue and get ready to start tiling. Okay, so now we're gonna be using Dafco Ultra Flex. Now, I've been using this product for a long time and it's never failed me. Now, when you're using any glues on a two-story building, you have to have something that has a bit of give in it. So if you have a lot of movement in your floors, then Dafco have another product which is a two-part mix. This is basically just powder and water. So the water ratio is 6 to 8 litres per 20 kilos. So Eugene, if you could just put maybe a third of that in this bucket. Okay, so I notice when there's a little bit of a shine to it, then it's pretty close to where I need it to be. And when I pull it out, just give it a bit of a shake, you see how it comes off the mixer. That is perfect. Now what you need to do is wait 5 minutes, let that sit, and then come back and mix it again. Beautiful. Okay, so we've laid out the floor tiles. This is our cuts on the end. We've evened it out. Now be very careful. This is where your shoes can actually tear the waterproofing. And if you have any blobs or any high points in your waterproofing, the shoes can actually kick them off. And as I've said in the last video, 70% of waterproofing fails, and it fails for a number of reasons. And one of them is careless tiling. So now Fair Trading does say that you need to cover your tiles 90% of glue. All right, so I'll place the first tile. Now most tiles have a direction, so make sure you look at the back. There is an arrow here going upwards, and whatever way this tile goes, I'm gonna make sure all the other tiles follow the same direction. Okay, thank you, sir. That is really nice. it's well past the mark on this side. So if I lift up for it to be level, you'll find it has around, on one tile, has around 4mm gap underneath. I'm just guessing from up here. Beautiful. It's got to fall in both directions. So now I'm going to use 3mm spacers on the floor tiles, as I said earlier. So I just put that in. Now the reason I'm putting it in now, because I want a pretty accurate cut on what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to measure to the wall. Now I'm not going to make an exact measurement. So usually you would minus 3mm for the grout joint, but you also need to minus some off the back. Now what I'm going to do here is actually do a 8mm cut. So I'm going to take 5mm off the back. So it's 5mm off this wall. Okay, so remembering that the wall tile will come well past that 5mm. Okay, be very careful you don't get lipping. This has a slight lipping in it. I will correct that. So if it does have lipping, you have to raise the tile back up and put it where the low points are. And that's just a bit of a low point there and just a little bit of a low point here. Okay. Okay, that's better. So when you do get glue on the tiles, it's actually good just to give it a quick wipe, especially between the grout joints. It's so much easier now than later, that's for sure. So because we're tiling direct on waterproofing, you've got to be very careful not to cut it with any sharp tools. That's looking good. That's well past the line. So that is even harder than that fall. Remember, this is a smaller piece, so it needs to be harder to push it this direction. So what I've done there is just put the floor waste just over these two tiles. I'm dividing exactly between the two of them. So I'll hold that down just to keep pressure on that and just mark around it. Okay, so before I take these out, I'm going to put numbers on here. I'm going to put this number 1, number 2, number 3. Okay, so here's number 3. This is quite crucial at this point. Yeah, that fall's beautiful, actually. Let me see how much fall that's got. Oh, that's perfect, eh? So now what we've got to do is put the tiles on actual slopes going inwards to make sure that it actually comes from every direction into the waste. And that's why we cut it on a 45-degree angle. Now I'll put on number 5 and number 6. Okay, so now all the pieces are in. Now what you've got to do is balance out every single corner to make sure they all don't have lipping and they sit nicely into the waste. Now this one here is a little bit of lipping there. I've just got to push that in a bit. There it is there. A little bit there. Just minor adjustments. You don't want too much lipping because you're going to feel it when you're walking on it. You can't avoid it totally when you've got these cuts, but you can minimize it. Okay, so that's done. I'll just wipe that up. Once again, just take it out of the grout joints. Okay, so the fall in the shower area is looking really good. So you can see the gap under the level. And when I turn the level the other way, you can see a gap good that way as well. So this will give a nice flow into the waste. Okay, so now we're going to start tiling on the opposite side. You've got to work around this hob and we need the measurements to still stay consistent with the walls. So the way we're going to do that basically is use a level to the edge of the first tile, just to the end of it. And we're just going to put that until it's level. And then once it's level, we put a mark. Now, from that mark, we grab the wall tile. So this is going to be the most accurate way to do it. You put the wall tile up against that mark. And then you mark this side. And then we just mark it on the lower end. Okay, so I've put a mark using this long 1.2 meter level on the opposite wall. And then I get my smaller level up against it. And it's on the mark. I put it tight together so I know that it's a good straight edge. So once I'm happy with that measurement, I'll then mark this. And then I could take this level out of the way and then mark the rest of it. So this fall is spot on going in this direction. Now from here, it's going to go that way, and here it's going to go that way, so it's going to come down. I'll just see how it fits this way, make sure I can set it in. Oh, beautiful. So I've already done the toilet penetration. That was pretty good. I used the grinder, cut around. Okay, so now we've got to this level and it's getting a bit tight. So I'm going to start going this direction. Okay, so that's cut. Let's see how that sits. Beautiful. Okay, the floors are done. Now we just let it dry. Now we're ready to grout the floor. So I had Eugene pull out all the spaces and also clean between the areas where I wasn't able to reach with the sponge. And so that's all clean. He's vacuumed for me. And so now we're ready to put the grout in. So the grout I'm going to use is Dafco sanitized grout. Now this is a 1.5 kilo bag, and to every 1.5 kilo it says to put in 300 to 340 mil of water. So he chose a color that would match the tile as best as possible. So this is a gray, but it has a touch of purple in it. So hopefully it will match okay. Okay, so now I'll just stir that up. Okay, so now I'm going to be using this sponge applicator. This is a really good tool if you want to do grouting. I'm not sure how I did it before. You can get squeegees as well, but I find this much easier. Okay, so all we do basically is put it in the area and you go one direction and then you go the opposite direction, and that will then squeeze it into position and it'll take out all the air bubbles. That is actually looking like a really good color. I'm very happy with that actually. Okay, so now we're ready to take the grout off. Now it's really important to understand this concept. You don't scrub the grout back off. You gently wipe it. And the only way you can do that consistently is with a big, wide sponge. So now what I'll do is just put that on the floor gently and just wipe that off like this. And you can see straight away the color comes. Now there will be residue when this dries and you can wipe it again. But for now, I'm just going to do that and that's it. So it's really important to understand when you're using grout that it's never the color you see as a powder, ever. Okay, so you've got to look at the color chart to see what color that grout becomes. So it's best to take your tile with you when you're purchasing your grout, and that way you can actually see the tones, whether it's a yellow tone or a silver tone, and then you will see whether it's going to suit your flooring or not.
Wow, this looks amazing.
Looks great. I think you did a good job choosing the grout. That looks really nice. It really complements that tile. Okay, so we brought up the wall tiles and unpacked them, and we're using the boxes from the wall tiles to place over these tiles to protect the grout. So if any glue falls, it's not going to fall on the ground and dirty it. And we're going to be using this angle trim. So this is just to finish off the edge to make it look nice. So we're basically going to sit this on that side like that, but we'll do this when we do the uprights, when we do the risers. Okay, so as we did on the other side, I'm going to place this level on the tile below, this big tile, and I'll transfer the measurement up top so I can get the top one in position, in the right position. And there we go there. This hob is actually falling down this way, so I'm going to raise it up a bit. Okay, and we'll just place that on there. Okay, so I finished the tiles. This one is definitely higher than this one, and it just tapers down. So we've now straightened it out. It's pretty level. Now I always check my level. I turn it around to make sure that it hasn't been bumped or damaged, so it's still actually level. Okay, so also I have dropped these tiles just marginally to come this way. So being a shower area, the screen will be sitting on this end, and so the rest of the water will still come down this direction. Be careful not to make it fall the opposite, because the water will just sit there. All right, so now I've cut the riser for this tile here, and I've put a little bit of glue on an angle just on the top to hold the trim in place. You need to have that trim glued in So it can't just sit there. So what I'll do, I'll just put this in place first, and then I'll just put the trim behind. Okay, and there we go. Beautiful. That's looking good. So everything's in place, it's all done, and this is looking fantastic. I'm very happy with it. It's all coming together. That's going to be a really good platform for the shower screen to sit on. So we've grouted the hob and it's all dry, and now we're ready to start the wall. Now with the wall, you've got to be very particular. This is going to be our finished height here before the trim. And so we've transferred that measurement over to the niche to make sure that the tiles work within the niche, and it does. So the tile will come from here to here, and then you can see there's plenty of room up here. It's around about 20 mil. That's 10 mil for the tile and about probably 3 or 4 mil for the glue, and just a bit extra, just for a bit of movement, just in case I'm off in my measurements by a mil or two. Okay, so now, once we've done that, we then measure back down to the tile heights. So here I've allowed for 3 tiles, not including this bottom one, 3 tiles plus 2 grout joints. And that comes to this point here. And I've marked it, and using my long level, I've ruled a line. So that line becomes crucial because you can see this tile here is higher than the mark. Now, this is how I'm going to mark out the heights for the floors. The floors are uneven, and they're uneven for a reason. So the waste is just here, and so the fall of the floor from the door has to come this way, so the water doesn't go into the bedroom. It also has to come away from the walls, away from the hob, away from the toilet and the vanity. It's all coming to the waste, which means that the tiles are slowly climbing. So every one of these tiles will have to be cut on a taper. Now this particular tile is going to sit over the hob, and we've measured it to do that, and it's going to sit like that. We have to cut in for the hob. So it's pretty easy to do if you've got all these measurements. Okay, so now I'll just mark this one out and glue it in, and that way it gives me a profile to measure for this one. So when you unbox your tiles, you're going to find there are some edges which are cracked, or there's a bit of a chip. So what I usually do, I identify those tiles, put them on the side, and wherever I've got cuts, I get rid of that so I can use my tiles efficiently. And now I'm going to use a 14 mil notch trowel. These walls are uneven. Okay. So what I'm doing here is basically just making sure that this is level, and you'll find the bottom usually is coming out a bit. So for whatever reason, I always find that. And you can see here, the level's hitting the wall here. So this tile really needs to come out a fair amount. Now, if I'm packing the base out, it means I have to pack the top up as well, because it is coming out. Okay, that's actually level like that. So this is the time where you need to get the measurements are accurate, and I've just got to get everything level. All right, so now these 2 tiles are in. They may need a little bit of fine tuning, but they're looking pretty good at the moment. All right, so now I've got a really good benchmark to measure this tile here. That's looking good. Yeah, that's good. Now just got to double check this way. Oh, that looks good. Okay, so we've done the 3 rows of tiles. Now we're up to the 4th. Now we're going to be putting a trim here like we did on the hob. And it's going to be cut at a 45-degree angle, so they both meet up nicely. So I've already cut the trim, and so now we're ready to go. So I'll just put this in place. Now before I lock it in, I've put extra glue along the top to lock this one in, just like I did for the hob. Now, I'll get Eugene to grab that end. If you can take it all the way, Eugene. All the way. Okay. Beautiful. 13 mil. It's actually in the right position. All right, so now what I'm going to do, the trim is going to want to push off the tile. So I'm going to put some wedges behind it to clamp or push that trim up against the tile. And we'll take these out later. Okay, that's done. Now we'll do the penetration, so the flick mixer. Okay, so I've cut the tile, I used the grinder. Okay, so now we're just going to leave it to that height, and we're going to start on the other side because we are expecting the shower screen people to come soon. So Uncle Bobby's going to be happy with this. How you going, Bob?
Hey, Bob. Long time no see.
Mate, good to see you.
You still got it? Hi, how are you?
This is Eugene.
Eugene, Bob, nice to meet you, mate.
Hey.
We wanted to the outer edge here to just gain as much room inside this in here.
Yep.
And Eugene was saying earlier, you said pivot the way.
Yeah.
See, semi-frameless is nice because they swing in and out. All shower screens have to swing out.
Yeah.
Semi-frameless will swing both ways. A fully framed will only swing outwards. Good thing with long shower screens like this, if they swing in, which only the semi-famous will do, is you don't use up any real estate out here.
I think I'll do a pivot.
Yeah, I prefer a pivot door.
Okay, so we finished this wall up to 1200 mil, and we've also tiled the section behind the door. Now the reason we've done that, so we can put the metal trim in, and the trim is cut at a 45-degree angle, and so you need to put them in at the same time so they can sit properly, and it looks great. And we finished just in time for Bob from Penrith Valley Glass to come and measure up for the shower screen. So I've known Bob and all the guys from Penrith Valley Glass for over 10 years. And the reason I use them because the quality of product, quality of service, and they're not overpriced. So if you are looking for a shower screen in the Sydney region, I will put a link below for Penrith Valley Glass in the descriptions below. Okay, so now we'll just tile the niche area up to 1.2 meters. So I did transfer the measurement from the left to the right before I started this wall. So the mark is there. All I've got to do is cut the tiles and place them. Okay, so now I'm putting the last piece in for the bottom of the niche. And the niche is looking quite nice now. I'll just push that in. I'll finish it off in a sec. Okay, so you can see the height here. That's really good, and the height will finish up there, so it'll just be one full tile. Now usually when you do make niches, you do have to cut into your tiles. Now we formed this so it doesn't, or we did the set out so it does not have to have any cuts at all. And one thing to note, when you are butting a tile up to another, to make sure that they are level to each other. Okay, so now we're going to finish off this section. Now the reason we have to do this first before we finish off this, because this is the through wall, so we have to continue making this the through wall, and then we'll just run these up after we finish both these sides. So we've already pre-cut the trims, and the trims again are at a 45-degree angle. Just get the right one. So that's 45. That's going to sit nicely there up to that point. And then this one will just sit in place up here. And that's looking pretty good. We've measured it, everything's looking good. So we know the height where the tile's gonna finish by basically measuring these 3 tiles. So there's 3 more tiles to go up, and it came up to 905 mil. So we've measured the trims to go exactly at 905 mil, and that's what they come to. Beautiful. Uncle Bobby's gonna be happy with that. Still got it, Bob? So these being 600 tiles, I did have to use my bigger tile cutter. So this is my 600 long Sigma cutter. And again, it's a brilliant tool. Okay, so we just got the cover plate that's going to sit over this penetration. And you've got to make sure when you do your cut that it's going to cover that. So make sure that the cut's not too big. Okay, so I've made the cut. It fits beautifully around, but it's square. So you've got to make sure when that cover plate does go on, it doesn't show those edges. Okay, so now I'm going to have to work off a ladder. So whenever you work on a ladder, be careful. Most accidents happen on short ladders. Okay, so now I'll just put this piece in. So I'm using these wedges to hold the trim in place, but sometimes I actually use 3M's blue or green tape, painter's tape to hold it in. So either way, you just need to make sure you lock that trim in. Okay, so we've done both sides now, and the trims are sitting in beautifully, and I'm very happy with it, and so is Eugene.
Yay!
Okay, so now we'll continue on with the niche. Now, because we don't have any center piece to measure off, what I've done here is basically just push this tile up against the sides and see if there's any taper. And so when I put it on this side, you can see the gap is a little wider than the bottom, and up the top there's none. So I've cut the piece already, and I just cut the top one just in a little bit more. One thing to take note, what I've done here is actually use the good side, the non-cut side, around the inside of the niche. That'll give a nicer finish. So if you do use a grinder, and sometimes you do have to, you got to be careful how you cut, because it can actually chip the edges and look a little bit ugly. Okay, so now how do we tell what kind of cut's going to be here? Interesting. What I'm going to do here is place this tile pretty much as a benchmark. So I'll just place it in like that. Okay, and that'll give me an edge that I can measure off. Okay, so I've set the middle piece in place so that'll hold it while it's drying, and we'll just let the whole lot dry before we start on the internal. All right, so we've given the tiles plenty of time to dry, and it's pretty solid. And so now this piece needs to come out. And so we've also cut the trims ready to put into the niche, and it's the same trims we used on the parameter of the shower. So basically they're 600 mil, they're gonna sit inside here. So I've made this really tight, and that's sitting in beautifully. Okay, I'm happy with that. All right, so the next step now is to put the base in. We've cut these pieces. Now we are using the floor tiles in this niche. It's gonna make a nice feature of it and just break up all that gray and that gloss. So this is a matte finish. This is actually a non-slip for shower areas. So I don't want that to sit flat. I want it to have a slight rise to it so the water will come off. Also be careful, do not make this tile lower than the trim. Just make it slightly higher. There will be a bit of lipping. Do that on purpose, okay? The reason being, you don't want water just to sit behind the trim. Okay, so now because the back tile is gonna sit on this, I need to let that dry before I put the back on. So I'm gonna give that a couple of hours and then I'll put the back on. Okay, so now we've cut the side pieces. We've also allowed the tile to come up higher, 15 mil, and also this way 15 mil. So now we'll just put in place the two ends, the middle, and then we'll measure off for the trims. That's looking great. Woohoo! Okay, so I've taken all the measurements. Now I'll cut the trims so we can go to the next level. Now I am doing something here that you won't be able to see on camera because I can't get the camera up high enough. It's at the highest point I can get it. So now, this window I believe was put in on an angle because it's in the shower area. You should never really put timbers in shower areas. But we're working with what we've got, so that's why we waterproofed it. Now, to avoid any problems in the future, as they've done, they put the window on a tilt so the water can run off. I'm gonna put these tiles on a big tilt. See, I'm gonna put the level up to where it's actually in the bubble, in between the level, the lines, and that's it there. And it's literally, without using the measuring tape, it's 10 millimeters up. One thing I didn't mention, when you're doing trims in a three-way corner, as we have here, we've made the two top ones come together at 45-degree angles, so to make a 90. And these ones here are basically just one straight cut, so they're just gonna sit in. And there we go there. This is quite easy to do. There's not much to take in consideration for this one. Okay, so we'll put the second piece on. Let's get that out of the way. Beautiful, look at that. All right, the last one's now in and it's looking fantastic. I'm very happy with that. One thing you do have to be careful of is that the trims don't move when you're putting all the other tiles in because it does push everything out. So you just got to go through and just check that all the edges are looking good, and this is spot on. I'm very happy with that. Okay, the window is complete. The tiling is finished now. All we've got to do is set in the floor waste with the glue. So for the floors, we're going to use a smart waste. So this is a tile just been cut in. I haven't glued it in yet. So I've just cut it the right size and I'll put it in this plate in a minute, in this cover plate. So I'll just put the glue in. So now I'll just sit that in place. And there we go. Nice and firm. Feels really good actually. Don't push it too far in. You do want it slightly lower than the tile, but not any more than slight. I'm going to hold this in place with a heap of wedges so it doesn't move overnight. Just tie it in like that. Just squeeze it in. Okay. Just so it doesn't slip out of place. And I'll correct the position as well while I'm doing that. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in this plate. Not too much. And I'll sit that in and just press down. Now the glue will come from the bottom here because I have put enough. Okay, so that looks fantastic. That's nice, just to even the grout joint all the way around, and I'll leave that on the side to dry. I'll leave this to dry probably around about 24 hours because there is a lot of glue in that. I don't want anyone to step in it and let it collapse. So all we've got to do now is basically just grout the walls and put the silicone in place before we do the fit-offs of the toilet and vanity and all the other bits and pieces. So what we've done prior to that was cut the timber architraves. I've nailed them in place. We've also put a gap filler behind the trim. Now be careful if you've got anything over about 3 mil, you've got to use a specific product, and we have used a product that can go up to 10 mil, and that's looking fantastic. So during the renovation of the bathroom, I did put a lot of base coat on top of the damaged ceiling. So I put 2 lots of base coat, and then I put a top coat. We let that dry during the process in between when we had downtime. We've also sanded that back. Eugene used sugar soap on the mold. He washed all that off. It came up pretty well. And then we used Dulux Sealer undercoat for the top coat setting compound. So if you have any raw raw material like any kind of paper or setting compound, you do need to put a sealer undercoat. The top coat won't stick to it properly, and in the future it will peel off. So be very careful with that. And then we use 3M's blue tape and we place it all around the trims, around the timbers, in preparation to put the top coat paint. And so what we used for the top coat was the Dulux bathroom and kitchen mold inhibiting paint, which is just a flat white for the ceilings. And for the walls, we used the same product, but in a low sheen and just a slight off gray, which turned out brilliant. Okay, so once the paint dried, we took out all the cardboard, we cleaned the floors in preparation to put the grout. And so the grout we're using is the same as what we used on the floor, which is the Davco sanitized grout. And so it's the exact same color. So now, when you do put grout on, make sure you don't put it on the internal corners. Okay, so we're going to be using silicone for that. Okay, so now what we do is just strip all these plastics off. Eugene, if you can grab a couple. Okay, we're done. Okay, so now I'm going to place the silicone on, and the silicone I'm using is made by a Sika, and this one here is a bathroom kitchen laundry silicone, which has a mold inhibitor in it. And the color we've chosen is a light gray that's in between both these colors, so we're going to just use one color. Okay, so now there's a specific way to put silicone on. So what we're going to do is get the silicone right into the gap, and then we're going to use this little product here, a little rubber made by Paint Partner. This is a brilliant product. It has all different types of radiuses for different types of applications. So now what I'll do is place the silicone on, then I'll spray on some soapy water, and then I'll wipe it off with this Paint Partner rubber. I'm using a 2mm radius. So whenever I'm doing silicone, I always do the bottom first and work my way up, because I'm going to be using water. If I start it up the top and spray the water, it will come down, then I can't put silicone on the bottom. So now I'll only spray only up to the silicone, and then all I do is just place the Paint Partner against the wall, 90 degree, and just slowly just slide that across, and look how beautifully that cleans up. That is fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to place silicone around all the penetrations, just so the water doesn't go in behind the tile. So I should have thought of this earlier. Charlie put all the flick mixers under pressure to make sure there was no leaking in the pipes. So when I was tiling, I could have just turned that off and then take off the cap, and then a bit of water would come out, but I could have actually got the tile closer to the pipe. And that's the way I normally do it, but I didn't think of it. It's been 7 years since my last renovation, so the brain didn't kick in. So when you are silicone around any penetration, you've got to make sure that you put the silicone flush to the tile, because the fittings are not going to sit on properly. Okay, so this side's done. I won't put the plug back because it's only just going to interfere with the silicone, so I'll leave it off. All right, so the silicone is now dried and it's time to do the fit offs. And the first thing I'm going to do is the flick mixer and the shower head. So the product I'm using is Tap Art. They're a Korean based company, and this is a brushed nickel, and it looks quite nice with this tile color actually. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is put the cover plate on. And it has a seal in it, and basically just pushes on, just like that. It's pretty simple. And the next thing is just the handle. So, and it's fairly simple as well. So you've got an Allen key here, and you put it through this little hole and you tighten it. Now the next thing we're gonna do is put the shower rose on. So the brand shower head we're using is Helicone. Okay, so this particular shower head has a certain sequence. So this one, the sequence, you put the cover plate on first, then you put your Teflon on. So now I'll put on the adapter. Now be careful when you are putting it on. Okay, so next thing we put on is the shower arm and diverter. So this is the diverter here between the handpiece and the rose, and it has 4 grommets in there. So basically you just slide that over, and then you just go through and tighten the screws. But just make sure that they're all tightened, the whole 4 of them, because if you don't, it'll flop down. Now we'll just put the hose in. So you need to be careful, you need to read your instructions. These are directional. So in this case here, this section that tapers sits up the top here. And this end of the hose goes into the handpiece. Okay, that's it. All right, so we'll just sit that in place. Okay, there we are. And I usually just place a slight angle for the head, and that's done. Okay, so now we're going to put the tap on for the toilet. Now this is not straightforward. Usually you would put a cover plate on, and then you'd put a mini cistern cog or a small tap that actually allows the hose to go into the toilet. Now in this case here, we've got a bit of an issue, not very common, but common enough. So when plumbers do the plumbing for floor wastes, usually they'd run the base into that floor waste, and what happens there, it charges the water. So water's constantly flowing into that waste. But sometimes they make what they call a dry waste, which means that nothing runs into it, and sometimes that'll dry out, and if it dries out, then the stink will come through that floor waste, and that's not a good thing, right? So then you have to throw a bucket down of water regularly as it dries out. So what they say in New South Wales, there's a ruling through the Australian standards, through fair trading, that if you have a floor waste that's a dry waste, then you need to have a tap as well. So what you do is just turn it on, let the water run to the waste. Hopefully you've got a fall for that to happen. So what we have to do here is put a tap on and also a mini cistern cog. Okay, so now that's done. It looks okay. The great thing about this is that you don't have to grab a bucket to charge the waste. So all you got to do is just turn the tap on. Okay, so this is the area the vanity is going. The taps are on the right side, the drawers are on the left. So what we're going to do first is put a cover plate over the waste. So this waste, we cleaned off all the waterproofing so there's no obstructions, and the plate goes on and it's very snug, very tight fit. Okay, now the reason we need to put a cover plate there, because this vanity is on legs, and so that means you're going to be able to see everything from underneath. So we do need to make this area look fairly clean. Okay, so we've got the vanity in position, so it's sideways, and you can see these little holes here. They're pre-marked holes for the legs. So now we'll just screw them in. So one thing you've got to take note of, these are only very small screws in this vanity. So when you're lifting up, you don't put pressure on the legs. Okay, so now this is in position. So now what we have to do is level it out. But I've measured the vanity and it comes out to 890 mil, pretty much exact. The vanity top is 910, so there's 10 mil difference on either side. So you've got to make a decision whether you keep this off the wall by 10 mil or if you place it against the wall, and that means you're going to have 20 mil lip on the other side. So Eugene, which way would you prefer?
In this case, I think I'll push it out so that there's 10 mil gap on each side.
Okay, this front one has to go up a lot. Just the front one, yeah. All right, so now that we've got this level, we can now mark for the penetrations, for the taps, and also for the waste. Okay, so now we're ready to drill that out. Okay, we'll just push that in, please, Eugene. Beautiful. Look at that. Okay, so we've vacuumed all the mess. Now we'll put the cistern cogs on. So we've put the Teflon on already. Now I'll just put these on. Okay, it's done. So now I'm going to put on the towel rail, and this is also made by Tap Art. And so basically the door is going to come to here, and so the shower door will open inward so it won't hit the towel rail. And so the height that I'm going here is in between the two tiles, so then it looks aesthetically pleasing. Also, I've aimed it to fit halfway between either side of this joint of the tile. Okay. So let's just see if I can get that all the way in there. Okay, so now just use the Allen kit and just tighten off the body. Now you do have to do this pretty tight. There's a lot of pressure on tail rails, and I notice over the years they still come off. Okay, so I've got Eugene to place the vanity top on top of the vanity itself, upside down, just so we can put all the waste and the flick mixers in and the hoses. So there's a number of things to take note here. So this section here is actually an overflow. So if you've got a vanity that has an overflow, you need to have a waste that has an overflow. And you can tell here, that little cut there and there is an overflow vanity waste. Okay, so it's got a couple of rubbers and washers here. So there's one that sits on the top and it angles with the taper of the waste. And that sits right directly underneath here. Then you sit the second rubber in. And there we go, there like that. So these wastes are notorious for leaking. So you've got to make sure that they sit in properly. Just push in that rubber. Now it's very common for plumbers to put silicone over this area, and we may have to do that as well because they do leak. So now I'll just put the flat washer on top and then I just screw on the nut. So you got to do it fairly tight, but not excessively, because if you do it too tight, it crimps it. Now, the next thing to note, in Australia, we use 40 mil wastes. So the waste we're going to have, which is a trap that will fit on this. Now, this is a 32 mil. So if you've got that, you need to get an adapter. So to change it from a 32 to a 40 mil. So this here we've got from Bunnings, and it's got a seal already in there, so you don't have to put Teflon. So now we're going to change the 32 mil to a 40 mil. Okay, so now we're going to put the flick mixer in. So the flick mixer has its own little seal just up the top. The screw-on section has a seal as well, just on top of the washer. And this little groove here shows that that sits on the front. So there's a stopper. So it screws on basically to that point there. Hopefully you can see that on camera. So what we've got to do pretty much is place the hoses and everything in at one go. So I'm going to get Eugene to place the flick mixer underneath. Okay, so now we'll just slip these hoses through, remembering which side is hot, which is cold. So the red one is the hot, the blue one is the cold. Now you don't need to do this too tight. Now I'll just screw this one in. Now there is a stopper and it'll stop it at the right point. Okay, so that's as tight as it's going to go. Now I'll just screw on the nut. Now you want this on fairly straight, so Eugene, if you can eye that to make sure it's straight. Just going to tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so now this comes with 2 screws, and just to lock this off to stop it from moving. So I'm just going to tighten that up. There we are there. Just stops any movement. Okay, so now we'll turn this vanity around. Okay, and we'll just put that in place. Beautiful, that sits nicely. Nice looking tap, Eugene. Okay, so now this is the cold water, and the hose fits perfectly. The length is great. Okay, that's on. And now the hot water. Okay, so now I'll just tighten up the nuts. You've got to be really careful with this though. Just do it softly, don't do too much. Okay, so now I'll turn the taps on. And no leaks. Fantastic. Okay, that's beautiful. Let's test the hot water. Okay, so the reason we fill this up before we put the trap in is to make sure there's no leaks on the waste itself. Okay, beautiful. No leaks at all. Okay, so now I'm going to prepare the trap and install it. So this is a 40 mil combination S and P trap, so you can convert this either way. I'm just putting this on temporarily, so I'm just going to screw this onto the waste. So the connector has to be glued in. So I'm going to try not to put too much on because it's going to make a mess underneath, and we want it to look fairly clean. So I'm just going to put enough on, make sure I cover it well, and then I'm just going to connect it in. All right, now I'm just going to measure for the PVC pipe. So I might just make that a clean 400 mil. Okay, so now that I've cut that, I'm going to take this section of the trap off, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the actual connector, not on the pipe, just so we don't make too much of a mess. And so now I'm just going to put this pipe in and push it in as hard as I can, and make sure that the writing is in the back so it doesn't show. All right, so there's one more step we've got to do before we connect it up completely. This came with a shelf. Now, it's not always possible to put a shelf in a vanity because of the situation of the piping. But in this case here, it looks like I'm going to be able to put this in. So all I've got to do now is just mark out where the pipe is and just cut a hole. So I'll just try to slip that over. Wow, easier than I thought. Beautiful. I'll put a plate over that. Okay, so now we'll put this second part back on. So what we'll do is just turn that trap around a little bit. Now we place this screw-on section first, Then we use the third rubber. Now this rubber is a little bit different to the other two. It's wider and it's got a taper edge on both sides to lock in the trap and also this cover. So now we'll place that on. Okay, just put it down, not too far down. It'll find its own way. So when it pulls up, that'll tighten up. Okay, so now we'll just turn the trap around. It'll find its place. Place this one in, place that one in. Make sure it's in properly. Just close that off, screw that in. Okay, then I'll just screw in the bottom one. And you need to be fairly tight on these, just hand tight. Okay, that's in, that's tight. That's tight, and now I'll just tighten the one on the waist. Okay, so they're all tight now. Okay, so now we'll just test it. There we go. Beautiful. No leaks at all. Perfect. So all we need to do now is seal off the vanity with silicone, but first we're going to install the toilet and seal off both at the same time. Now the toilet we are using is Caroma, and Caroma is a really good brand, and this particular one is from the Cooler Bar series, and it's called the Luna Clean Flush. And the great thing about this system, it has an orbital trap. This is great. It's a 3-part system. We've already put the first one on. One thing you've got to be careful though, is once you click it into place, you cannot move it unless you spray a little bit of grease before you start. So I'm going to do it this time. Spray a little bit of grease around here. Now the reason you want to do that, because this is an adjustable system. So it allows you to do the offset at a certain distance. So all toilets have to have a certain setback. First I'll just place this in the ground and then sit the trap on top. Now it has to go in straight down. And you can see here, this is just a little bit out. I'm just going to turn it until I get that right. So this can alter your toilet 50 mil, going either 50 mil that way, or this way. So we want to go away from the tap. So we're actually turning this offset back this way to the vanity. We've got plenty of room. Now this section here is cuttable. So you can actually trim this one back if your setback is wrong. And this here is just to brace it against the wall. Now you can also screw this into the wall, but we're choosing not to. So that now is the exact level I need to be. It's flush to the ground, so it needs to go all the way down to the tiles. Okay, so all we've got to do now is measure the distance from the wall to the area where the furthest point on the toilet. Now we've already measured it at 257 mil. Now you've got to be very careful with this because you can't take too many of these corrugations out. 257 comes to here. So what I'm going to do is cut it pretty much at this third corrugation. Now, if you go cutting all of them off, this seal, this collar will not sit on. So you have to have at least 2 of them to sit this on properly. Okay, so I've cut the trap down, and then I filed it just to give it a nice edge. So you want the pan collar to sit in nicely. Okay, so just put the rubber on, and then you put this cover over the rubber and that will lock it in place. Okay, so just make sure that's on really tight. So now what we're going to do is just quickly do a test run and just put this toilet in place, see if it locks off. That fits beautifully. I'm very happy with that. Now the second stage is actually getting this into place. So what we're going to do is take out this little plastic cover, which is for the hose to come through. Okay, so the only thing you need to watch out for now is your inlet. So this is where the water comes through, and it comes in from the tap. And so the hole we've taken out, now this is on the right side. Now, usually you'd have it on the same side as where the tap is, but we've got a 600 mil hose that's going to reach. And so we're going to just leave this where it is, leave it as a manufacturing fitting. Okay, so this is the outlet. This is where the water comes through. And so you've got a little rubber seal here. You must put this on. Unless you want to have Niagara Falls. So this rubber has a sticky section. You peel that off and you sit this over. Be careful, don't push it straight on, and get past the actual thread of the outlet. So just go around it, push it past it. Okay, so now that's in. All you've got to do now, and it's pretty simple, is place this the hose into the hole, and then place this down. All right, so if you look inside the system, there's 2 holes, one on the left and one on the right. So all you gotta do is put these straight into those holes and just make sure that that seal stays on. So you've got the washer there, the rubber washer. Okay, so now we're gonna put the toilet seat on. These are quite easy to do, but you do have to follow a couple of steps. Now, when you do put the toilet seat on, if you do need to take it off in the future, if you look behind here, there's a little button and you just push that in and it comes out. Okay, so first of all, just put these toggles in. So you just bend that back, this little metal section against the plastic, and just push that in like that. Pull these through. Okay, there we go there. So that's now where I trim these off, and they just break off like that. So it's quite easy to do. Okay, so this comes with an Allen key. You just screw that in, and I won't do it tight yet. So before I lock this off, I'm going to test this. So you've got two holes here, you line them up, and you just sit them in place. So you just make the adjustments that you need. Okay, so that's sitting in perfect like that. Now, what I'm going to do is just make the adjustments. I'm going to let that soft close come down. Okay, so you see there, just on the rim, it needs to be to the end. Yeah, that's perfect, spot on. Okay, so now to take that off, you push that button, as I mentioned before, off, and there we go. That will come out, and then I'll just lock that off. So you can see the angles they're both at. They're slight angles going this way. Check that one more time. And see the distance, perfect there, and perfect there. All right, so now I'm just going to do the final lock off. And there we go. We'll place the cover plate over it, just to finish that off, make it look pretty. Okay, now we'll just put the seat back for the final time. There we go, it's locked in. So now we'll push this back, just very gently, just into the pan collar. So that looks like it's sitting in beautifully. It's sitting nicely against the wall. The only way we can test this now is by flushing the toilet. All right, so what we'll do first, we'll attach the hose. So now we'll just test it by putting the water on. Okay, so the water stopped just below the marked line, so the factory setting is pretty good. Okay, so now we'll just give that a flush. That's a nice flushing system, Eugene. Okay, so now we'll just check the level of the toilet, and that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to put the toilet roll holder on, and it's just going to sit here. You've got to be careful because the screws they gave are really long, and if you put them too low, it's going to obstruct the drawer. It's going to hit the drawer. So you just got to watch out for that. So I'm going to put it at 750 mil high, similar to other toilet roll holders in this house. One thing you've got to note, if you're putting your toilet roll holder on the left or on the right, you shouldn't see these screws here. So they're the grommets that you lock off. So this here has been hidden. It was when I first got it, the other way around. Now, toilet roll holders aren't usually universal, but just inside here, there's two screws. And so you just unscrew them, turn it 180 degree, and that way you can hide these screws. Okay, so just like all the other fittings, this is a tap art product, and that's done. Okay, so that's sitting in beautifully. Just be careful if you do put a toilet roll holder on a vanity that you don't put too much pressure on it. Okay, so now we'll just silicone the vanity and also the toilet. So I'm just using clear here, which is the most common to use for around the toilet and the vanity. Okay, the vanity's done. So we've flushed it now probably 6 times, 7 times, and there's no water coming out. Clear indicator over about a half an hour period, and there's no water coming out. So this is safe enough to put the silicone. Okay, so I'm just going to do the silicone on the base only. Okay, the toilet's done. So now we'll leave the toilet sit for 48 hours. We need that silicone to go very hard before anyone sits on it. Okay, so we're nearing the end. Now we'll just put the door on, and we'll put the door stopper on, and we're finished. Okay, so I'm going to be using this brushed stainless steel door stopper, and it is magnetized. So the reason we're putting a door stopper, because when you open this door, it's going to hit the tile, and these handles are just porcelain. They're going to shatter. Okay, we're done. We just had Jason from Penrith Valley Glass install this shower screen, and he's done a great job. And he also installed the mirror, and so now this bathroom is complete. Eugene, what do you think?
I think it looks fantastic.
It looks great. Do you remember when I first came here to inspect what you thought was the problem, which was the toilet? And I told you that the toilet was your problem. You had mold in your ceiling, you had a damaged ceiling, your shower heads were too low, you had your waterproofing fail in the shower area, you had cracks in the tiles. There were so many things wrong. We've really come a long way, eh?
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I told you it wasn't going to be easy. I enjoyed doing this bathroom. I love bathroom renovations, but it's a reality that I've got to be very sensible in how I treat my body.
Yeah, and you did really push yourself really hard.
Yeah.
Many times during the renovation that Musa was really feeling a lot of pain.
It's fine. It was worth it. Now, saying that, I'd like to say thank you to Mark and all the team from Dafco Sika. So if you want to know more about Dafco and Sika products, I'll put a link below in the descriptions, but I'll also put a link for Charlie from Top Notch Plumbing, for Bob from Penrith Valley Glass, John from Camel's Bins, and also for Caroma and all the other companies that I've used during this renovation. So in this two-part video, I rushed through the process of plastering, removing mold for painting. So I will put a link below of videos that I've made previous with all these different ideas. So one thing I haven't mentioned when we were making these videos is about color. So when you are choosing your products and your colors, make sure that you choose something that's probably more contemporary. Try not to be too tempted to go for something fashionable, because you remember that your bathroom is going to be around for a long time, 20, 30 years. And if you choose a color that's in now, it might not be in 5 years' time, let alone in 20 or 30 years. And as I said before, 70% of bathroom waterproofing fails because of poor techniques and poor preparation. So the way we've done this bathroom is to Australian standards, but remember that there's a thing called deemed to comply. So not everyone does bathrooms this way, and especially outside of New South Wales or even outside of Australia. In actual fact, Eugene's dad was a builder in Singapore, and they have different building methods to us here in Australia. But as long as it deems to comply, it's still fine. And a big shout out to Colin and Jane. I hope you guys are doing well.
Hi, Mum and Dad.
So Eugene, the next time you have a problem with the toilet, do me a favor. Don't call me. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And if you have any comments at all, please leave them below and I will get back to you. And I'd ask you, please consider to subscribe, hit the like button and share this video, and there's many more to come. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Hey guys, Musa here from Quantum Home Improvements and Solutions. Welcome back to the channel. And so I've got with me Eugene again.
Hello, everyone.
We'll do that again. Okay, so now we've cut them all. Now with a grinder, I'll just cut off these ends. Actually, I don't need to use a grinder, do I? No. What do I need a grinder for? Am I stupid or what? Okay.
You're gonna say that on video? That's not funny.
Would you normally call them that? Not really.
Not really.
What would you call them?
The usual.
What?
Mommy.